How worried are you about this Supreme Court decision on your emergency power on tariffs? The hearing today, a lot of people were trying to read through the tea leaves, what the justices were asking. Some were saying they were overly skeptical. You can't really do that in Supreme Court hearings, but how worried are you that they may unwind this thing?
Well, I heard the court case went well today, but I just heard that a little while ago because, as you know, it was just 2 hours ago that they finished up.
All right, well, that's one of the many problems that Trump has as president. He has people tell him things that he wants to hear, and then he never bothers to look into anything himself. So yesterday, SCOTUS began hearing arguments on whether Trump can unilaterally impose global tariffs. And the way that he's been imposing these tariffs has been functionally as if he's taxing the American people. Only thing is, if you call it a tariff, it's not technically a tax, even though that's what he's doing. And only Congress can tax the people. And unlike what Trump said, it did not go very well for him. The conservative justices were pretty skeptical, actually, of Trump's lawyers' arguments. So first, let's start with Chief Justice John Roberts. Trump's team has been pretending that tariffs are not a tax. Roberts pushed back on that notion while grilling Trump Solicitor General D. John Sauer. Take a look.
The vehicle is imposition of taxes on Americans, and that has always been the core power of Congress. So to have the president's foreign affairs power trump that basic power for Congress seems to me to kind of at least neutralize between the two powers, the executive power and the legislative power.
Let me say two things in response to that. First, the notion that the taxes are all borne by Americans and are not borne by foreign producers whose goods are imported is empirically, there's no basis for that in the record. It's actually a mix.
Well, who pays the tariffs? If a tariff is imposed on automobiles, who pays them?
Typically there'd be regardless of who the importer of record is, there'd be a contract that would go along the sort of line of transfer that would allocate the tariff, and there'd be different. Sometimes the foreign producer would pay them. Sometimes the importer would bear the cost. The importer could be an American, could be a foreign company. A lot of times it's a wholly owned American subsidiary of a foreign corporation.
Okay. Then you have Neil Gorsuch, who was looking to see where to draw the line in executive power. Sauer argued against lower court rulings that shot down Trump's use of emergency powers under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to levy sweeping tariffs on foreign countries, a power solely granted to Congress in the Constitution. So Gorsuch then pushed Sauer for an explanation of that.
You say that we shouldn't be so concerned in the area of foreign affairs because of the president's inherent powers. That's the gist of it, as I understand it, why we should disregard both major questions and non-delegation. So could Congress delegate to the president the power to regulate commerce with foreign nations as he sees fit? To lay and collect duties as he sees fit?
We don't assert that here. That would be a much harder case now in 1790.
Isn't that the logic of your view, though?
I don't think so, because we're dealing with a statute that was a carefully crafted compromise. It does have all the limitations that I just talked about.
You're saying we shouldn't be concerned with. I want to explain to me how you draw the line, because you say we shouldn't be concerned because this is foreign affairs and the president has inherent authority, and so delegation off the books, more or less. And if that's true, what would prohibit Congress from just abdicating all responsibility to regulate foreign commerce, for that matter, declare war, to the president?
So even though Trump would like you to believe that he's not worried about anything, apparently he is. Like, he's very worried about potentially losing this case because he has been posting about tariffs being life or death for this country. He posted this to Truth Social. He said, tomorrow's United States Supreme Court case is literally life or death for our country. With a victory, we have tremendous but fair financial and national security. Without it, we are virtually defenseless against other countries who have for years taken advantage of us. Our stock market is consistently hitting record highs, and our country has never been more respected than it is right now. A big part of this is the economic security created by tariffs and the deals that we have negotiated because of them. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So if SCOTUS strikes down the tariffs, then what happens? It's probably not going to be death the way that Donald Trump would like you to think, but we would maybe have to give all of the money back that they had received. So Amy Coney Barrett was concerned about all of this, and she was unsure of how that process would take place. So Neil Katyal, the lead counsel representing a group of small business plaintiffs, explained that the process could work this way. He said, how would this work? It seems to me like this could be a mess. That was Justice Amy Coney Barrett asking Neil Katyal. Katyal told the court that only the businesses directly involved in the case before the Supreme Court would automatically be entitled to refunds should the tariffs be struck down, noting that others would likely have to challenge the duties through a separate process to protest duties that have been paid. And with respect to everyone else, there is a whole specialized body of trade law, Katyal said, spelling out the procedures. It's a very complicated thing. There's got to be an administrative protest, he said, noting that similar reimbursement procedures have often been lengthy. So a mess, Coney Barrett responded. So, the thing is, it's already a mess. Everything is already a mess. Yes, there are businesses who have had to eat a lot of costs because of these tariffs. But the thing is, there's all these other unseen costs, right? It's not going to be very simple to just delineate how much money the government owes these small businesses who, many of them have maybe had to go out of business already because they couldn't keep up with it, because they were unable to offload those costs onto their customers. And then that's the other thing, is if you were offloading costs onto the customers, does that company get those costs back? Or should it really go to us, to the customers? It all gets very messy, but the thing that stood out to me about Amy Coney Barrett's position specifically is that's really not her concern at this point. Like, the process of how it happens, if and when it happens, is not her concern. She's on the Supreme Court. She is there to judge the legality and the constitutionality of the tariffs in the first place, and whether or not Trump was even supposed to or allowed to have been able to implement these tariffs, seemingly just at his own whims. Whenever he felt like tariffing a country, he would just do it. And then Congress had no say, the people had no say, he was just doing this. To be fair, I guess he said he was gonna do it and the American people still voted for him. So if you wanna take that as consent, then sure. But again, the Supreme Court is there to judge whether or not that was within the realm of his presidential powers. So there's a lot that can be said here, but what are your thoughts, Brett?
So call me jaded, but I don't think Amy Coney Barrett gives a single flying crap about the power of Congress. She, as someone, I worked for a constitutional scholar at the Hoover Institute at Stanford University, and the guy was like, unbridled power of the bully pulpit and executive. And minds like that are the ones that put Coney Barrett where she is. Two things are useful to understand. It's useful to understand that there are two factors that, in my opinion, the Supreme Court justices who have been placed there in the last 25 to 30 years value. One, abortion rights, because it has nothing to do with like whether it's right or not. They know they need religious voters to be part of that group that votes for Republicans. And the second is just money, make money, make money. Hey, that's it. And so the Heritage Foundation type people, the Federalist Society type people are the free trade people. And they don't like tariffs. They want to make as much money as possible for everyone. And so, and I think that's where they're gonna come down. They're gonna look around because they're not beholden to Donald Trump. They are there to protect the two things I talked about a minute ago. And I think that all this question asking, oh God, what about the legalities? What about Congress? At this level of constitutional legal scholarship, you'll go read some of the question time with the Supreme Court justice from the past. It is nutty. These are like weird ass things that they at this point can find any justification for the decision they already were gonna make. That's why they're there on the Supreme Court at this point in our structure.
Yeah, I mean, they've surprised us a few times here and there, but not consistently enough to where I agree with you. Like, it's all about what's going to make them and the country the most money, and that's all they seem to care about. And by the country, I don't mean the small business owners of this country.